basically told him, I want the I Dream of Jeannie theme song, but in dubstep.
That song slaps, man. Who did that?
It was a guy off Fiverr.
A dubstep version of the I Dream of Jeannie theme song?
I don't know why that was my vision, but it was.
So that reminds me, I was hanging out with a bunch of my friends, and we decided to prank one of our other friends. We were talking about a web series. And so my friend Steve calls our friend Kane, who's doing the music for the web series. And Steve's like, hey, I thought of a few more like sound cues that I want to get. And Kane was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And he just starts making up the most ludicrous things just to see what he can come up with. And then he's like, and I want you to come up with like a dubstep wub wub version of Swing Low Sweet Chariot. He's like, and so I wanted to be like, swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me. Wub 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 wub. And Kane on the other side was like, oh, you're messing with me.
Well, when I told him what I wanted, I was not messing with him, and he delivered. So if you guys like my intro, his name is CH6K0R. So I don't know if that's like checker or what, but he is on Fiverr, and he is fantastic. So shout out to you, dude, for making my dreams come true. So hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Strikes My Fancy. Thank you for that intro. We are back again with the rest of the craziest Harry Potter fan theories. I've got my right-hand woman, Jamie Ferreira, here.
What's up?
My resident Hufflepuff. And we are going to be discussing the crazier of the craziest. Okay, so the first episode was just kind of the smaller ones that maybe even I couldn't see. This one is going to blow your socks off. But really quickly, before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you where you can find me. You can find me on Facebook, the Strikes My Fancy podcast group. You can find me on Instagram at Strikes My Fancy Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Strikes Me Fancy. You can find me on my website, strikesmyfancy.podbean.com. I'm also on Apple, Spotify, even YouTube, if that is your preferred platform. Just look for Strikes My Fancy. In addition, if you have a topic that you want me to look into, send it over to my email, strikesmyfancypodcast@gmail.com. Or if you are really passionate about a topic, maybe even a professional in a topic, let me know, because I'd love to have you on the show. I mean, that's the whole show, is having guests on to talk. So shoot me another email. And real quick, before we get into our topic today, I want to promo two of my favorite lads on the planet, the gentlemen Rob and Ross from I Understood That Reverence podcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ross, and what's the crack?
And I'm Rob, and this is our podcast, I Understood That Reference.
We cover all corners of the pop culture spectrum, including movies, comics, which is my favourite, games, and everything in between.
With our own unique mix of games, trivia, a little insight, all wrapped up in Irish accents.
And of course, the tin whistle.
So get up them stairs and download this podcast into your ears.
I'm Ross.
And I'm Rob.
And this has been I Understood That Reference. Available on Spotify, SoundCloud, Podchaser, and wherever else decent podcasts are available.
Yay!
All right, let's get into it. This next theory, first theory of this episode, is that the Dursleys are so angry because Harry is a Horcrux. This is crazy to me. Okay. I'll let you poke the holes in it because I can see you're like stewing right now.
Thank God.
Okay, so the theory here is that we see how badly I misspelled and wrote Horcruxes.
Horcrux! You were so angry you were leaving out letters.
I know. The Horcrux affects people in short time periods from weeks up to a year. They become someone far removed from their natural selves, and that's if they even survive. Now, the Dursleys were exposed to Potter the Horcrux for at least 10 years before we enter the scene. And all of them are terrible, angry, and abusive people.
Okay, can I go?
You can go.
Oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so when you told me that we were going over fan theories, I knew this was going to be included, and I kind of wanted it to be because it's not true. It's not accurate. I know immediately why it's not accurate. It's because people keep insisting upon it. And I'm like, dude, canonically, there are reasons why it doesn't make sense. Okay, so the biggest reason why it doesn't make sense is McGonagall sits outside their house for like an entire day or maybe even 2 days before Harry is brought to the Dursleys. No, I guess it would be 1 day because he's brought there the same day that Lily and James die.
Right.
So, yeah, so she sits outside the Dursleys' house like all day. and sees what horrible people they are. When Dumbledore goes there to bring Harry to them, she's like, I've watched these people all day. They are terrible people. So they were awful before Harry even entered their lives. They were awful from the get-go. I mean, look at the way Petunia treated Lily.
Well, they cut Lily off because she was a wizard.
No,
before Harry even entered the picture.
Well, according to yeah, Petunia and Vernon did. I thought you meant like their parents too. And
no, Petunia and Vernon cut Lily and the rest of the Potters off.
Exactly,
they didn't even know their nephew.
Yeah,
because they didn't want to have any association with wizards.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want anybody to realize that they're unusual or anything. So, I mean, that's the biggest reason why it doesn't make any sense, because they were awful before Harry even entered their lives.
Right.
And then you see the way that the Horcruxes affect the Golden Trio in the 7th one when they're all taking turns wearing the locket. And it's a pretty instantaneous effect. It doesn't necessarily make you evil right away, but it makes you very testy and angry and irritable very quickly. Especially look at Ron and the way that it affected him, because, as I've talked about before, Ron has a lot of insecurities, and the Horcrux feeds upon that. Yeah, exactly. Ron spends every waking minute with Harry at school together. Because not only are they best friends and spend a lot of time together, they have all the same classes.
So true.
They sleep in the same bedroom together.
He would have been affected long before the other Horcrux came along.
Immediately, yeah. He spends so much time with Harry. He would have started feeling it immediately if that were the case.
I agree,
and Hermione isn't affected by it. The other people in their dorm room isn't affected by it. I think that if it were Harry who were doing that, everybody around him would be acting like that. It wouldn't just be the Dursleys.
Right.
Who were already like that before Harry even entered their lives. So canonically, it just makes no sense, and people keep bringing it up.
She almost slapped the table, y'all.
And it's interesting, and I think that people are hoping to, put the Dursleys in a positive light and make it clear that it's not their fault that they are that way. No, they are terrible people.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the counter arguments were saying, how dare you excuse an abuser, because all three of them were abusive to Harry.
While I'm at it, though, I just want to say the casting of the Dursleys in the movie, how spectacular was that?
Fantastic.
They were fantastic.
I just saw the guy that played Dudley in another
He was
movie.
in The Old Guard on Netflix.
The Old Guard on
I watched
Netflix.
that too. Oh my God.
He was a shitbag in that movie too.
Yes, and he was so good. I was so happy to see him acting again.
Yeah, you sent me that text. I was like, oh my God, he's in this movie. And she's like, oh, so good he's acting again. I was like, fucking Dudley.
I know. Yeah. And from everything I've heard, all three of them were delightful people.
Yes.
But they did such a good job of playing such obnoxious, horrible people. And then you also think about Aunt Marge in the 3rd one. She shows up and is a horrible person.
She is
before she meets Harry. Harry's a good kid.
That's
one of the biggest reasons why I love Harry so much. After everything he went through in his childhood, he could have been such an asshole, and he's just such a naturally good person.
Yeah. Okay, so here's probably the last of the crackpot fan theories.
Aside
from the big one that I'm saving for the end. Okay. So this one is Willy Wonka is George Weasley.
I had read about this before.
Okay, so the theory is that George time traveled. So apparently time traveling happens in this Weasley family very often. So George time traveled to a different timeline to make a new life for himself. The evidence. Willy Wonka runs a magical candy factory. The glass elevator, the Wonka wash, the television chocolate candy, and the fizzy lifting drinks are just a few of his spectacular required to be magical creations, okay? Apparently, a chapter cut out of Willy Wonka showed him creating a sweet that made children sick to get out of school, which George also did in the Skeeving snack boxes. Willy also makes candies that cause a big reaction. 4-course gum, exploding candy. These things almost certainly require magic to do, okay? Wonka is eccentric, mischievous, loves to laugh and watch the chaos unfold around him, all of which describe George Weasley. And the smoking gun, Wonka says he's a trifle deaf in his ear and to speak louder next time. That was the only one that I was like,
This is a fun theory. I've heard this one before. There's a lot of theories across so many fandoms where it's like the idea that these characters have a lot in common, even though they don't seem like they would.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to hear about, but it's not actually real.
I know. Well, Roald Dahl did his stuff long before J.K. Rowling did hers.
Oh, yeah. So I just remembered something, actually, about the time travel thing. So J.K. Rowling herself has said that the reason why people don't use, like, time turners to, like, go back and try to defeat Voldemort earlier and stuff like that is because in the Department of Mysteries, during that battle, they are all destroyed.
Oh, okay.
So time turners like almost don't exist anymore. So all of these theories that revolve around time travel and stuff like that, I'm just realizing that it's a lot less likely if time turners are so much harder to come across now.
Yeah.
Anyway, regardless though, it is interesting because of the similarities of liking pranks and liking candy and stuff like that. And J.K. Rowling herself has actually said that she loves Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like she said, it's one of the books that she thinks every child should read.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting that she kind of maybe wanted the twins to seem a little bit like Willy Wonka, and there's seemingly magic in the factory, like some of the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But I don't. Here's the thing. That joke shop was his dream.
Yeah.
It was his dream
Well,
with
and
George.
he married Fleur, right? No, that was Bill.
That was Bill. No, well, he does go on to marry. He marries Angelina Johnson,
Okay.
who was on the Quidditch team with him
See,
and
he
George.
wouldn't leave her.
Yeah, I don't think he would leave her. They have children together.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have left the family. I don't think that he would have abandoned the joke shop when that was
Agreed.
his dream. I think he would feel like he was abandoning Fred in a way if he did that. I don't necessarily believe that that's who George is.
Well, and not to mention, I believe that the reason Willy Wonka said, "I'm a trifle deaf in this ear," was a sarcastic response to the little boy that was like the TV guy, because he was like, "I'm saying that's the fire," and it was super loud
The
and
kid was
obnoxious.
being a little shit, so he was like, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Bye."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure it was sarcastic, but it is funny, a funny coincidence.
Okay, the next one. The Sorting Hat can predict the future. The theory is that the Sorting Hat can see who the child will become and supports them based on that and not who they are as an 11-year-old child. Some of the reasoning behind it. Neville gets sorted into Gryffindor despite how big of a coward he is at that age. Perhaps the Sorting Hat knew Neville would kill Nagini and need the courage to do so, and thus placed him in Gryffindor where he could grow those capabilities.
I don't know if it's so much the hat seeing the future, so much as just knowing what somebody is capable of. So
Well, yeah, because, I mean, when he looked at Harry, he almost said Slytherin, and I think he was sensing the Voldemort in him, but nobody knew at that point was there.
yeah, well, Harry is also very ambitious, and he is,
Yeah.
there are a lot of traits in him. He would have done well in Slytherin. That is
Yeah.
something that the hat says. Often he says it more than once to Harry, and I think it is very true. It's the fact that Harry does not want to be in Slytherin. He wants to be a good guy. He wants to be brave.
Yeah.
And so that's why the hat realizes, oh, he doesn't belong in Slytherin. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to be there.
Well, and more of their backup for this theory was that the Sorting Hat, when it's not sorting, is kept in Dumbledore's office.
Yeah, he's
So
just chilling.
how many conversations would that hat have been able to hear, you
All
know?
of them.
And so it's like, could it have gathered all of the secret intel to kind of like add to, who it needed to bump up?
So much stuff goes down in that office. He was privy to a lot of information.
know, yeah.
So it is really interesting. I think it's less seeing the future and just being able to see who people are and what they are capable of and being able to make good guesses based off that.
Yeah.
They something that you don't get to see a lot in the you don't get to see it at all in the movies is the hat has like a poem/speech that it makes every year. And it talks about, all of the houses and what the houses stand for, and talks
Right.
about, preparing itself for the future. I wonder if that's what he does in Dumbledore's office all year long. Is just
putting together
just works
his
on his poem for the next year.
His dating profile is like, I like poetry and long walks on the beach.
I was talking about a Harry Potter musical. They also have, in addition to the Sorting Hat, they also have the Scarf of Sexual Preference. And in addition to being sorted into your house, it also tells you what your sexuality is. And they're buddies, and they just hang out in like a hat box in Dumbledore's office.
All right, the next theory. These is actually a couple theories surrounding Crookshanks, who is Hermione's cat. So the first is that Crookshanks is Lily. The reasoning behind this is very sparse, but both have red hair and green eyes, and both hate Scabbers, who we know is Peter Pettigrew. So
Wow.
that's the meat to that one. I think it's just a nice idea to think that she could live on in some form, but she wasn't an animagi.
Yeah.
I can't say that word.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, I didn't know if they meant like she had been reincarnated.
So the other one is that it was Lily's cat. That
Yeah.
Crookshanks was Lily's cat first. So the reason is because when Harry goes back to his house and he runs into like Berthmilda or whatever her name is.
Bathilda Backshot.
Yeah, and they're like talking about how his mother had a cat or something like that. He said something along the lines of, I wonder if it's still alive. Lily dies. Harry is taken to the Dursleys. And then it's really not that long before Hermione goes and gets her cat.
12 years later.
12 years later. Cats can live that long, especially if they're supernatural.
I know. I'm not saying anything.
Okay. So they're thinking, I mean, when she goes in, the menagerie owner says that he's been there a long time and nobody wanted him. He also immediately recognizes both Peter Pettigrew in rat form and Sirius Black in dog form, which would make sense because they visited Lily and James quite often. So that's that theory. And then you also, this was actually confirmed by J.K. Rowling, but apparently Crookshanks is part Kneasel.
Yes.
Which is like this special kind of being.
Yeah, it's like a it's a magical beast basically. It's like a hyper intelligent cat.
Yeah,
and it's like a hell of a hunter. I
think.
think.
It can like recognize bad and good, so that could be why it reacted to Scabbers.
Yeah, that's why it seems hyper intelligent. I don't think it's necessarily that it's a person pretending to be a cat. I think it's just a very intelligent cat because he is half Kneasel.
But do you think it could be Lily's cat?
The thing that made me wonder though is that like if she had that cat when she lived with James, wouldn't Lupin and Sirius have recognized the cat and been like, oh crap, that was Lily's cat. She called him Fluffers or something like that.
That's an actually really good point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess unless they thought, 12 years later, it couldn't possibly be the same cat, so that's why they just never mentioned it. But that was what I thought, too.
Yeah.
Like, if it was Lily's cat, like, maybe they would have recognized it.
Yeah.
In terms of that actually being Lily, like, either in animagus form or maybe reincarnated or something like that, it is really interesting the fact that that Crookshanks recognizes Sirius and recognizes that Sirius is not evil because Crookshanks helps Sirius into Gryffindor.
Right.
Because Crookshanks is the one who steals the paper that has all the passwords on it that Neville had and brought it to Sirius. So it is interesting to think about the fact that, okay, this cat knows that Sirius is good and knows that Scabbers is bad, and Lily is the only person who would know that because even Lupin thinks that Sirius did it at this point.
Yeah.
Lupin still thinks that Sirius actually betrayed James and Lily because everybody was under the impression that Sirius was their secret keeper. It does make sense that one of the few people in the world who would realize Sirius didn't do it, Scabbers did.
And Scabbers is a piece of poo.
Yeah, it would be Lily. So that is a really interesting theory. Oh, something else that I just thought about why it doesn't make sense that it would be Lily. Crookshanks is kind of indifferent to Harry.
I feel like she would be a little more loving to Harry.
She would be a little bit. If it were Lily, she would be a little bit more affectionate to Harry. Exactly. That's her son that she didn't get to spend much time with, and now here he is.
So she'd be like leaving Hermione's side to go lay with Harry. And
yeah, I think they talk about Crookshanks curling up with him like on his lap like once in the book.
Right. Okay, so the next theory is that Dumbledore is death. The theory stems from the Deathly Hallows, from that tale of the three brothers. Now, that story talks about the three brothers who all try to cheat death in their own ways. They've been compared to Voldemort, Snape, and Harry throughout the series. Yep. Voldemort represents the oldest brother who believes he can defeat death, but eventually falls due to his ego. Snape is the second brother who spends his whole life focused on a lost love, Lily. And then Harry is the youngest brother who was able to hide from death for his whole life before choosing to embrace it. Some people have pointed out Dumbledore could also be associated with death in this story. Not only is he responsible for Voldemort and Snape's demise, but he's also the one who greets Harry at King's Cross. And on top of that, he's the one who gave Harry the invisibility cloak. So it's an interesting parallel.
I think I want to make something very, very clear. He's not actually death. Like, he's not like the Grim Reaper or something.
Yeah.
But
he has a lot of stuff going on. He doesn't have time to just go serve up souls.
It is supposed to be a parallel.
I felt like that too. Like, it's a nice little touch when at King's Cross and it's Dumbledore because it's a familiar face. It's somebody he trusted, somebody he hadn't seen in a while.
There are a lot of things that are really kind of cool. So Voldemort, we all know that Voldemort fears death, and that's why he tries to conquer death by making all these Horcruxes. And who's the only wizard that he's ever been afraid of? Dumbledore.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a fun parallel that, Dumbledore could represent death. And then also there's the idea that, the youngest brother, when he realizes it's his time to go, he takes off the cloak, passes it on to his youngest son, and he greets death as an old friend.
Right.
When Harry is going into the Forbidden Forest, because he realizes he has to give himself up so that the war could finally be won, he goes to the forest. He takes off the cloak in the book. It's not really in the movie. Okay. But in the book, he is wearing the invisibility cloak to get down to the forest. He takes off the invisibility cloak, folds it up, puts it under his shirt. So he's literally taking off the invisibility cloak to greet death.
Yeah.
And then who is there at King's Cross Station? I'm putting that in quotes. Dumbledore, who is greeting him like an old friend. Right. So it is a really interesting parallel
But I think she meant to do that.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely...
I don't think it was Dumbledore equals death. I think it was just these are some really nice parallels.
Yeah, and he is also... He
possessed all three of the Deathly Hallows.
Not all at the same time, though.
Yeah.
Which is something that's different from death. Yeah. The invisibility cloak was never really his. He borrowed it from James for research purposes because he knew that it was one of the Hallows, and James died before he could give it back. So he just hung on to it and then gave it to Harry when Harry was like 11. It's not literal. I don't want people to literally think that he is death, but he's absolutely supposed to parallel it in terms of that story.
So we have the next one. Harry is now immortal.
Oh,
I think this was just like, honestly, somebody well, okay, I know what she was doing. She basically said, I say she because it looked like a girl had written it. I don't have any way of actually giving credit for who came up with these theories just because they're so traveled over the internet. It was hard to find who actually originated them. Mm-hmm. But the person that I found was saying, I didn't like the way this ended, so this is how it would end if it were me. And then basically they said that, quote, either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. Right. And she said, what if it meant that they must die at the hand of the other, or else the one who lives forfeits death? Now, this was an interesting thing because for Harry, death was the only way he would ever see his loved ones again. Yeah. For him to die would be easy, but for him to sacrifice death so that Voldemort would die would be the ultimate sacrifice, and he would forever be, and this gave me chills, the boy who lived.
What a dick move to deprive Harry of that.
Yeah, and then consequently, had Voldemort killed Harry, he would have achieved immortality, which was his goal.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
So that, like, blew me away.
So as somebody who loves Sirius Black with every fiber of my being, the idea of Harry and Sirius never being able to, like, see each other again breaks my heart.
That's how I feel about him and Lily. Like, yeah, I know a mama's love. Like, not ever getting to see her boy again. Yeah. And then, like, literally watching Hermione and Ron die. Yeah. Ginny die.
I remember when I first heard this theory, an artist online had made a picture of him standing in front of the Mirror of Erised again, but instead of just his parents, it's like everybody he's ever known and loved. And I was like, why would you do that, you demon?
I know. Actually, that picture was in this theory.
Yeah. I can definitely understand the interpretation of that. Either must die at the hand of the other.
I felt it was fairly obvious that one of them had to kill the other one. Yeah. Like, that was just the...
Yeah, it's the either that makes me think it. It's, either one of them had to kill the other. Not necessarily that's the only way that they both could die.
Yeah. Well, that was the theory. Is that they were saying that because he chose at King's Cross to come back, that he forfeited death. So that Voldemort would die. Because he was sitting there and he was talking to Dumbledore about, do I have to go back? And Dumbledore said something like... It's up to you, Harry.
Yeah, you don't have to. You could go on from here, take a train, he says. Yeah. See, I was thinking that this would start when Voldemort died and he literally lost the only person who could kill him. Oh.
Right?
That's interesting. I still don't buy it, mainly because I don't want to. Because
it's so sad.
I want Sirius and Harry to hug. I love them so much. I could... Oh, my God. Sirius Black is a wonderful man, and he's so wonderfully flawed, just like all of the characters, and I just love him so much. And Harry never got to have a family with his parents, and this is the closest thing that he had to a family. And I'm good. Okay, we need to stop.
Jamie is not a very emotional person, and she's like blubbering right now.
Every year when we do our Harry Potter marathon,
the hardest death for her.
Every single year. It's the hardest one in the books as well. That page of Order of the Phoenix is permanently wrinkled with how much I cried over it. I'm not even
I borrowed
kidding.
it. I can confirm.
But anyway, there are so many parallels between Harry and Sirius in terms of, they don't really have families that they get along with. Of course, the Dursleys treated Harry horribly, and then Sirius didn't like his family because they were so like crazed purebloods and hated everybody and were also terrible people.
Well, isn't he related to Bellatrix and all of them?
Bellatrix is his first cousin, yeah. Ugh. And
I don't know why that's my response to her.
Yeah. And he's basically disowned by the Black family, and he goes and lives with the Potters. They welcomed him as like another son. And that's very reminiscent of the Weasleys welcoming Harry into their family. And I think...
Just to think that they would never see each other.
They have so much in common, and just the fact that Sirius Black sat in Azkaban for 12 years feeling guilty about the death of his friends. and their son who would grow up without his family. And he gets out. My voice cracked. That was just me having talked for a long time. I promise I'm okay.
We're going to get Jamie therapy after this episode.
I need so much therapy. But he finally gets out and he goes to Harry, and Harry realizes...
We get so little of their relationship. We really do. Like, they barely get to bond. He thinks that finally they're going to get to be there because Black goes on the run again because everybody thinks he's guilty.
Everybody still thinks he's guilty. He's an escaped convict.
And then when that gets cleared, he's about to come back. He's like, Harry, what if you came and lived with me? And that would get him out of the Dursleys' house. He'd get to go live with his godfather. And then, bam, death.
It never fully gets cleared because, Wormtail is still in hiding to a lot of people. And it's just, they never get the chance to. It hurts so much.
For that to be the ultimate sacrifice so that he could save everybody, and he has to sacrifice his feelings and watch everybody around him die and never get to see his loved ones. Like, oh my God. It's crushing, right?
Fucking hell. God, I really don't want that to be true. No, he greets death like an old friend. He dies and he gets to see his family, and he gets to spend forever with Ginny and his kids, and he gets to finally meet his parents, and he spends time with Sirius like he should have been able to in the first place. I'm fine. I don't have any emotions about it.
Well, you're about to feel all the emotions, probably rage most of all. The final theory that's going to make her head spin is that Professor McGonagall is actually a Death Eater. This was, okay.
I don't even have any notes for this. My notes are just question marks.
So when I first started reading this theory, I was like, not McGonagall. She's so sweet. She's so motherly. She's so maternal.
Literally everything she does is for Dumbledore.
She cries all the time. Like, she gets teary-eyed, blah, blah, you know.
Death Eaters could probably cry. I mean.
Okay, but I started reading this theory, and holy shit, okay. I could not believe it.
I'm excited to see what these people came up with.
Okay, so this person seemed completely sold on their theory. So her opinion of McGonagall is totally different probably from yours. Her first impression is that McGonagall is boring and emotional at all the right times. There goes the bird.
I flipped off the microphone.
So she's nice, but when does she actually do anything to help the trio? She seems to be all talk, vowing to stand next to Dumbledore when Umbridge kicks him out, but missing during the big battle of Hogwarts. Snape was a jerk, but at least he taught them Expelliarmus, the Occamans. Snape is also a genius, sniffing out Karkaroff and Quirrell and figuring out what the trio were up to all the time. Nice in this universe doesn't equate to good. Barty Crouch Jr. is moody, helped Harry during the Triwizard Tournament, and gave Neville a book about herbology. Quirrell always complimented Harry. So Minerva says a lot, and she's nice, but she does very little. If you were an evil Death Eater, it would make sense to pretend to be good, but never really help the good. Go on. Like, I can see steam coming out of her ears.
I'm listening.
Okay, so they think that she is a passionate Death Eater, sucking up to Harry Potter and Dumbledore. But actually, she could have been besties with Voldemort when she was in school. And when the books start, this was actually an interesting thing. Okay, so you brought up that when Harry is delivered to the Dursleys, McGonagall has been sitting outside watching all day. If you read the actions of the cat, when Dumbledore shows up, her eyes narrow and her tail flicks. That's like a cat is annoyed by that.
She's angry that Dumbledore is bringing Harry to live with these awful muggles she's watched all day.
Well, this person thought that she was mad that Dumbledore even showed up. It also made it seem like McGonagall had no clue what was actually going on, because the way that she was questioning Dumbledore, it seemed like she had no clue that Hagrid was bringing Harry. She had no idea what the plans were. She was just sitting there for an allotted amount of time, not knowing what was going to happen. Okay,
so when a drink of water in preparation.
We need wine.
Oh my God, I do need wine. I'm not drunk enough for this.
So when the books start, she is in her
Sorry.
I'll let you get that out of the way.
Yeah, let me go ahead. This is an ASMR podcast, really briefly.
That was actually super refreshing.
Oh. Sorry. My seltzer water just tried to explode. I don't think I'm going to have a sip of water right now.
When she shows up in the books, she is showing up as her unregistered animagus form. She only reveals her identity after Dumbledildo.
You sure you haven't had wine?
No. After Dumbledore reveals it for her. Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall. She looked distinctly ruffled. That's on page 9, if you care. If she was waiting for him, why not pop up and say hello? She looks ruffled, and she's angry that the wizards are celebrating the fall of Voldemort, because it says she sniffed angrily, page 10.
I just want to hop in and confirm she is a registered animagus. She is one of only 7 registered animaguses.
At that point in time, because she did register later. I didn't think she registered during that
I think she was already registered.
Okay.
I think so. Why would she delay registering if she was going to eventually? I don't know. She's McGonagall. She's by the book. She was almost a Ravenclaw.
When Hagrid cries about the Potters, she says, yes, it's all very sad. And what is our early McGonagall's view on Muggles? They're not completely stupid. Ouch, pureblood elitist ideals there. Also, she doesn't seem to favor her house. She takes 50 points for Harry being out of bed. She's the professor. Jamie's about to murder me.
I'm turning to a separate page so that I can make notes of everything that you're saying and why I don't agree with it.
Okay. She's the professor of transfiguration. So each of the professors of Hogwarts embodies their subject areas. For instance, Professor Snape and his cold, calculating, and scientific potions. Professor Sprout and her earthly herbology. The same is true of the shape-shifting and manipulative McGonagall. McGonagall also discouraged the trio from protecting the stone, while Dumbledore... I can't say his name at this point in
Dumbledore!
Dumbledore! While Dumbledore actively encourages protecting the stone, even Snape kind of encouraged it. And then when Harry tells her the stone is in danger, she doesn't even tell Dumbledore. She does nothing. McGonagall is also the one who sentenced Harry and Neville to the Forbidden Forest, where Voldemort was just casually slipping unicorn blood. The prophecy happened to be about. And then sent Malfoy, who's a traitor, with them. Then Ginny, Lockhart, Ron, and Harry emerge blood-covered from the chamber, carrying the sword and a basilisk-pierced diary. And this is the response. Dumbledore was beaming next to Professor McGonagall, who was taking great, steadying gasps, clutching her chest. So while Dumbledore is beaming with joy, McGonagall is at best registering shock. It could be a form of joy, but it also could be a form of anger. So she says, so you found out where the entrance was, breaking 100 school rules into pieces along the way, I might add. Right, said Professor McGonagall crisply, also moving to the door. I'll leave you to deal with Potter and Weasley, shall I? So her instinct was to punish them, even though they just saved, like, everybody and everything. Okay? Hold on, it's not over.
Okay.
In the middle of Harry's heroic account of saving Ginny's life and preventing Riddle from coming back to life, she berates him for breaking school rules. You'd think that Snape would have done that, okay? Not McGonagall. In Goblet of Fire, McGonagall never once tries to stop Harry from competing. Dumbledore does. Snape does. But McGonagall helps him along. Why? If she's so maternal and concerned about well-being, why? And when Harry gets away from the cemetery and brings back Cedric, 2 people try to get Harry away from the crowd. Barty Crouch Jr. and McGonagall, both of which fail. Dumbledore suspected Moody. Severus suspected Moody. McGonagall never had a clue. So either she's an idiot or she's evil. These are her words, not mine. Harry only survived that battle with Voldemort because Snape taught him to duel. So he wasn't totally useless. And then Dumbledore sends Snape and McGonagall on 2 missions, both of which she fails. Her first mission is to guard Barty Crouch Jr. while Fudge interrogates him, but she accidentally lets him out. So imagine for a second that she had succeeded in protecting Barty. Fudge would have been forced to accept the truth that Voldemort was back. The disastrous year of Order of the Phoenix would have been vastly different. Instead of fighting with themselves, the good guys could have been fighting the Death Eaters before they got much ground. Instead, Barty makes out with a Dementor, and Fudge lives on in ignorant bliss. Okay? And she can't even produce a Patronus. There's like 15-year-olds that can produce Patronus.
She can produce a Patronus. Her Patronus is a cat.
That's why that's why they got away, because she couldn't produce her Patronus, supposedly.
Oh, in that moment. I thought they
Yes,
meant like she couldn't at all.
No, in that moment, she wasn't able to muster up a strong enough Patronus to stop them.
Yeah, she probably couldn't have a happy thought in that moment. That's a crazy situation.
Her second mission was to get Hagrid and Maxime. That whole mission went off smashingly because the Death Eaters got there too. They knew about Hagrid and Maxime. And then also someone is sent out of the hospital room before Sirius is unmasked, and everyone is given assignments for the Reformed Order. Yep, McGonagall. In the aftermath of Dumbledore's death, McGonagall doesn't waste any time moving into the headmaster's office. When Snape and Lupin are grieving Dumbledore, McGonagall acts hard when she's usually the one who's crying, which makes you kind of think, oh, can she turn this on and off? Is it all an act? She takes Harry privately to her office and interrogates him. And quote, Professor McGonagall made an odd movement as though steeling herself, then rounded the desk to look at Harry, her face taut and lined. Then she badgers him, calls him Potter, which he even notes is like, only people who are ugly to me call me Potter. And that she doesn't stop interrogating him until another teacher steps in. If she was in on everything and she knew the good guy's side, why would she have to interrogate him so harshly? And her timing was even more horrible because Dumbledore had just died. Like, the Minister of Magic even waited until after the funeral to start interrogating. This is also 2 other strange things that she does. She wants to close Hogwarts and claims Dumbledore envisioned a time when it would close, but he actually said the exact opposite, that it should remain open at all times. And then she argues against Dumbledore being buried on the grounds because it hasn't been done before. Never mind that Hogwarts was his life's work and that was his dream. I think everybody can hear that. All right, and go.
Okay. I just want to start this again by saying we respect Minerva McGonagall in this house.
I was struggling, though, and maybe it could just be because I haven't read the book, so I don't have quite all the knowledge filed away.
So first of all, them saying that she doesn't favor her own house. Of course she doesn't. She is by the book. She is very fair. She is going to punish her students if they do something wrong. And you talk about how she sends Malfoy into the forest with them. Yeah, because Malfoy also messed up. She's going to give him detention as well as her own students because it's fair. Now, if we look at Order of the Phoenix, she absolutely favors her house because when they go to the Order of the Phoenix with the whole battle at the Department of Mysteries and everything, she gives so many points to Gryffindor because of the heroism that they portray, that they show in the battle and everything like that. And then even at the end of it, she's like, oh yeah, I guess I should give points to Luna too. Like, she almost forgets to give points to Ravenclaw because she's so excited to give points to her own house. Okay? She tries to be very fair, but of course she favors her own house. And one of my favorite moments of McGonagall in the entire book series, you don't see it in the movie series because they don't really go into detail, is Harry and Luna go to the Ravenclaw common room in the 7th book to try to figure out where the diadem is. They're starting there, hoping to figure out where the diadem is. They are then hiding under the invisibility cloak. The Carrows go in there because they found out that Harry was in the castle. I think they were looking for him in there, or found out somebody broke in. I don't remember why. But anyway, the Carrows are there. And then McGonagall goes there. And then she's fighting with the Carrows, which, by the way, the Carrows are known Death Eaters. If she was a Death Eater, she'd be getting all buddy-buddy with them. If I remember correctly, no students are there at the moment from what they see because Harry and Luna are hiding under the invisibility cloak. So if she were a Death Eater, were buddy-buddy with the Carrows,
they would have been chit-chatting.
She would be acting like it. No, but they were arguing about it. And she's like, why would Harry Potter be trying to break into the Ravenclaw common room? Harry Potter is in my house. And she says it very proudly. And it's something that she notices. And then, like, it warms her heart because Harry, like, the Carrows, like, spit in her face or, like, slap her or, like, abuse, like, just are, like, being really ugly with her. And he, like, takes off the wand and, like, stupefies them or something. The robe, I should say, and stupefies them. And she's like, oh my God, why would you do that? Because, again, she's by the books and you just attacked a teacher. And he's like, because they were insulting you. And she's like, oh, Potter. Like, it's a really nice moment. And I absolutely love it. She is so protective of Harry. And you don't get to see it very often because she does come across as kind of a cold person. But, I mean, she's very protective of him, and she loves Dumbledore. She absolutely loves Dumbledore. And because Dumbledore loves Harry, like, she knows how, oh my God, I can't even get my thoughts straight because I'm so frustrated with this. I need to look at my notes. I was making notes as you were talking. Okay, did you say that person was saying that she didn't defend the stone? Because she totally did. The chess match was her defense of the stone.
No, it was that she told them not to go after the stone, but Dumbledore told them to go after the stone. Snape was encouraging them to go after the stone, but she was like, don't do it.
No, I don't think anybody even realized that they knew about the stone, or they weren't supposed to know about the stone.
Okay.
And she found out that they knew because they were like,
well, supposedly Dumbledore was kind of like tossing them bones to kind of lead them toward the stone.
Yeah, and I've heard, so I think a lot of stuff that Dumbledore does, and again, one of the reasons he's very manipulative. It is one of the reasons why I have problems with Dumbledore. As much as I adore him, he has a lot of flaws as a character.
Yeah.
And I do think that he does kind of lead Harry down a wild goose chase, and I wonder if it's because he's trying to really see what Harry is capable of. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, it could have been to shape him. I mean, we talked about that earlier, too.
Yeah. And but also it's like, if a bunch of 11-year-olds, and I say 11-year-olds, Ron and Hermione were 12 by the time the actions at the end of Sorcerer's Stone take place. But anyway, there's still a bunch of kids, and they're going to go and be like, somebody's trying to steal it. Would you really believe them? You're thinking there are so many layers of magic protecting this thing. Of course she's not really going to be concerned. It's like, oh, a bunch of 11-year-olds are telling me something? Sure. And then, of course, she's shocked when they come back from the Chamber of Secrets. Like, she was thinking that everything was going haywire. They were going to have to close the school and stuff like that. And then they come out and she's like, are you crazy? Like, it's also very much a motherly thing. Like, I don't care that you saved the day. You could have been killed. Oh,
I see her as a very lawful good character, which is why she
is.
values discipline, order, that kind of stuff. Not so much that she was hard and trying to punish them, but that she wanted them to learn not to do that
She is
again.
a very rational person. That's why she was...
By the way, they never learned not to get into trouble.
Yeah, she was almost in...
So what do you think about the take that she's just either incredibly dumb or she's evil?
She's not dumb. She is not dumb at all. She's one of the few hat stalls in the Harry Potter universe, which means that the Sorting Hat took a very long time to figure out where she belonged. And it was torn between
Ravenclaw and
Gryffindor. So the Hat knows how clever and how brilliant she is. It would not have wasted that much time if she weren't.
Yeah.
So I don't think she's dumb for a second.
Then why do you think that she seems to never know what the plan is, and that like
nobody knows what the plan is? Dumbledore doesn't talk to anybody. That's true. Harry is at the center of the plan, and Dumbledore doesn't.
Snape.
Yeah, because Snape is quintessential at executing the plan.
That's true.
Yes, he doesn't even tell Harry. Harry doesn't know anything going into the last book. Are you kidding me? He knows about the Horcruxes. He knows that they exist, and that's it. Even Ron is like, did Dumbledore tell you anything? No, he didn't. He thinks that Harry is going to have to die to save the Wizarding World, and he said nothing. The one thing that Snape says that I totally agree with, because I don't agree with a lot of stuff that Snape says or does in the books, but the one thing that he says, he calls Dumbledore out on it, and is like, you're raising him like a calf for slaughter, or like a sheep for slaughter, whatever he says. And it's like, yes, that's exactly what he's doing.
I remember that scene when Harry sneaks back into the school, and I think it was when Umbridge had taken over, and she got in between.
That's another thing too. Why wouldn't she be totally into Umbridge and what Umbridge is doing if she doesn't want, like, if she's on Voldemort's side, or at least agrees with what he's doing and stuff like that, she would want him to stay hidden as well. The Death Eaters don't want people to know that Voldemort is back because they want to have the element of surprise. Right. So if Umbridge is one of the people who is so headstrong in the fact that no, Voldemort is not back, Harry Potter is spreading lies, the Ministry knows the truth, and he is not back, blah, 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 McGonagall would be totally into that.
Yeah, she would be on that
McGonagall hates Umbridge so much.
But what if that was like a power play? Like, she wanted to be in Umbridge's position.
I think she would have done something by that point to try to be in that position. Hell, she was practically already in that position. She was like the understudy to Dumbledore. When Dumbledore's not there, she's in charge of Hogwarts.
Yeah. So why do you think that she wanted to close down Hogwarts when Dumbledore had always said it should stay open?
Because it's dangerous. Kids are getting... Okay, let's talk about Chamber of Secrets for a minute. The cat gets petrified and somebody writes on the wall, the Chamber of Secrets has been opened again. Dumbledore barely bats an eye, is like, oh, everybody keep an eye out. That's weird. And then Colin Creevey gets petrified, and then he's like, Hogwarts is no longer safe. Proceeds to still do nothing. And McGonagall is like, bro, what are you doing? What are we doing? This is not okay. and then more and more people. And then Justin Finch Fletchley and Nearly Headless Nick get petrified. And then they're like, okay, let's have professors escort the students to classes. That'll be the next course of action. And again, it's like, Dumbledore, what are you doing? And then Dumbledore finally gets arrested. Fudge shows up with Lucius Malfoy and is like, you gotta go, bro. Stuff This is not good that this is happening at the school under your watch. And then McGonagall is in charge. And then when Ginny Weasley gets taken into the Chamber of Secrets, finally McGonagall was the one who was like, we gotta send the students home. This is the end of Hogwarts. We can't keep doing this. She wanted to close the school because it wasn't safe anymore.
That's
And
fair.
especially from somebody who, if I remember correctly, I think her father was a Muggle. I think she's a half-blood. So
Yeah.
she would absolutely be terrified about all these Muggle-borns being attacked and stuff like that. Those are kind of her people. Like, in a way.
Yeah.
And I just like, oh my God.
And that kind of reaffirms her motherly nature too.
Yeah. I think she comes across, here's the thing. I think she comes across as very cold in some moments because she's very by the books.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they don't take that as a very warm thing. And I think some people think that if you're not a warm person, you must be evil.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not particularly warm, but I'm not evil.
You're a Hufflepuff.
I'm a Hufflepuff. I'm loyal.
And I'm about as warm as they come, and I'm a Slytherin.
Exactly. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And I wonder if that's where this comes from. I call her McGonagall a badass because she is awesome and I love her.
I have
And
always
she's been through
loved-
so much shit in her life. Go on Pottermore and look up like the history of Minerva McGonagall because they talk about it. She has been through so much stuff. She's awesome.
Well, I've always loved Minerva as well, and I didn't.
great.
When I first read the theory, just the title of it, I was like, "The fuck," and then I started looking into it, and I was like, "Okay, this is not plausible, but it's also kind of badass just to read it."
It's really interesting. This person obviously did do a lot of research. You can
Oh,
tell
it was
that
a dissertation. I
Yeah.
cut so much out.
Yeah, you can tell that they probably thought of this at one point, went back through, reread the entire series, made notes of everything that seemed to back up their thought. They did put a lot of thought into this, and I applaud you. It's very creative.
I wish
and
I could give credit, but I literally looked and couldn't find a
I
name.
can see how much thought that person went into it. So mad respect to you for that. Trust me, this is not anything against that.
But in another way, like I couldn't agree with her just because she like lifted up Snape.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I don't understand how you can hate McGonagall and love Snape when Snape is very clearly a questionable person.
I think her point was that Snape did so many things to help, and McGonagall did so many things to hinder, supposedly.
I don't think she necessarily did anything to hinder. I think half the time she didn't know she was hindering because she doesn't know everything.
I think she was trying to protect people.
Yeah, exactly.
And Snape was a genius in the fact that he's hella nosy, and he figured out a lot of crap just by following people and skulking around. I think that's just kind of his nature.
yeah, I think.
I mean, he kind of stalked Lily.
Oh, he 100% stalked Lily. When people are like, he was in love with Lily, I always jump in. I'm like, excuse me, he was obsessed with Lily?
Yeah.
Those
in
are
like
two different
an
things.
unhealthy way.
And a very unhealthy way. And then oh my God, we need to have an entire episode just dedicated to Snape. I have so much to say about Snape.
I want to have an episode just talking about the characters and like their flaws and everything because I think it's so interesting to pick them apart.
I think we would have to do like an episode per character because there's so much to talk about.
Well, that's the end of the craziest fan theories for now. There's
beside
plenty.
myself.
There's so many more out there, and now that I've officially broken Jamie,
I will say one thing. My favorite thing about this fandom is about how it will never die because people like this keep thinking about stuff and keep coming up with imaginative ways that these characters interact and act
like,
without us seeing. It's really a beautiful thing, and I love it.
When Stephanie Meyer stopped writing Twilight, the fandom just kind of died because everybody was like, wah, wah, and then we started making fun of it. When J.K. Rowling slowed her roll, the fans were like, no, we're not dying today.
Yeah, no. There's so much out there in terms of fan theories and, even just Pottermore, like getting more information after the books have come out. That's canon.
They forced J.K. Rowling's hand so many times where she's literally had to just tweet yes, no to like theories. She like links the theory and she's like false theory or I love this theory. This is a beautiful theory, but no.
And she has fun extending the universe and people will ask questions like, hey, is there...
I know she gets criticized for that too because...
I love it personally.
I love it too.
Here's the thing. I think a lot of people get frustrated with it because I think they I know I don't necessarily know what she has claimed in terms of how much of this was pre-planned. I think that people think that she is changing what she has written as she goes along because she wants to seem more like, oh, I had everything planned out from the beginning. So it's like, somebody...
I think she's trying to make people happy.
So I think somebody will ask, on Twitter, like, oh, were there any Jewish students at the school? And she will tweet like, oh, yes, this person who was in Hufflepuff was a Jewish student. And then people will be like, you didn't know that beforehand. And it's like, it's her universe. She can create a character 20 years from now and it'll be canon. She has the right to do that.
Some of her changing things has kind of made problems with some of the storylines, but ultimately, I think she has a good heart behind it.
And a lot of it is not necessarily that she is changing her mind so much as just it's stuff that wasn't necessarily important to the story at that time, and so she hadn't said anything. Yeah. I think it's very possible that she always saw Dumbledore as gay when she was writing the books, but in this story, that wasn't necessarily important. Yeah. Now in the Fantastic Beasts story, it's playing
highly important.
It's playing more of a role.
Yeah.
But it just, in Harry's case, it wasn't important at that point because they weren't fighting Grindelwald anymore. Yeah. Grindelwald was gone.
I have not been able to emotionally connect to that series the way I have to Harry Potter, just because it doesn't feel like it was put together as well.
I don't connect to the characters as much. I just love being back in that universe. Here's the thing.
I wish it was back in the UK. I wish they hadn't put it in America because I think that makes a huge difference. The way we handle things is totally different.
Yeah, it's I don't know what the game plan is for it. I love it just because I love being back in that universe. Yeah. I think this is also you see it a lot in I think the Star Wars fandom too. There are some people who rip apart the later movies because it's just not the same. This is not the Star Wars that I love. And then there's some people who love the later movies because they don't give a crap. It's the Star Wars universe.
The whole story.
They don't care. I love everything that she adds to it because it takes me back to that universe. Yeah. I went to go see Crimes of Grindelwald, which people ripped apart, and I cried when they showed Hogwarts because I felt like I was home. Like
when they apparated into it, which by the way is not a thing.
Let me tell you something. They apparated outside of it and they walked across the bridge. Anyway, but I went to go see Crimes of Grindelwald alone, which I love going to the movies alone. That wasn't a problem. But I was sitting alone, sobbing over just Hogwarts.
And everybody's probably like, this poor woman.
And it was the middle of a day on a Friday. I'd taken a vacation day from work because I had a lot of errands that I had to run. And it's like the middle of the afternoon on a Friday, and I'm just sitting there crying over Hogwarts. And I'm like, the people around me probably think I'm very sad and single. And
that's great. I think we're 15 of the craziest fan theories. I hope you guys...
And there's more.
There's so many more. There's a whole world of these. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you, Jamie, for joining me today. It was a lot of fun. And we will be back in the future with more of these. All right, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. And always remember, question everything, never stop exploring, and above all else, stay curious.